in secret. My next guest is drafting a bill to change this process. Joining me now is Virginia Congresswoman Barbara Comstock. This is quite a development. I wouldn't call it necessarily a frenzy or a panic, but it certainly is a moment of reflection, at the very least, on Capitol Hill. You want to actually introduce legislation to change it. What do you want to do with your bill?
Yeah. Well, we are working with Congresswoman Jackie Spear and my colleague Bradley Byrne, who is a former labor lawyer in a past life, and we had hearings in the House Administration Committee, where I serve on, where we are really trying to get more transparency in the process. We are not going to allow any funds to be used to pay for harassment. We are going to have mandatory training. In fact, the Speaker has already said that is a mandate, so that is in place, but we need to upgrade those policies. They need to be uniform the way they are in the private sector. And then we also need to reform this process that you just outlined. We need to have something like an ombudsman or a victims council so that they can come forward and have protection and they have their own representation. So we are looking through all of these and seeing how we can quickly put legislation and policies in place. And let me just give you one example that really is outrageous that it's not the policy yet, is that a member of Congress, it is not against House policies or any of the rules of conduct to have a sexual relationship with a staffer or even an intern. That's something that we are going to change, that's been recommended that we can change in our policies. And we're going to continue to have hearings on best workplace policies. The corporate world has been doing this for decades. This is when people say, that was a different time. I can tell you, I've talked to HR officials who are much older than I who tell me that they were firing people in the 70s and 80s. So we really need to update this. This was put in place back after the Packwood sexual harassment allegations in the 90s, and it's just not up to date with where the rest of the workplace is.
One thing I was thinking about is this idea of like the settlements, the secret settlements, and taxpayers thinking, well, hold on a second. How can that money that is actually taxpayer dollars be used to provide for settlements, which means that no one will ever know whatever happened and that money is being misused? And so someone might say, well, it's just $27,000. But if you remember, also in the 90s, people got pretty mad about, a $900 toilet seat paid for by the Pentagon.
Exactly.
Is this something that you think that you could at least look at, or would it all have to be prospective in terms of the money that was paid and who had to do those settlements?
Well, that's what we're looking at that now. We are going to have hearings and more. Actually, I think we set up with a number of the members a briefing with the office on how that is operating. I don't think there's no cases that I'm aware. I've been told there aren't any cases in the pipeline right now, but I have called for having an immediate freeze of nothing going forward, and then let's look backwards to see what money has been spent and by whom. But I think we also need to really put out the message to women, and let's make clear that it is largely women who are the victims, not that there can't be men or other situations, but it is largely young women and, well, women of all ages who are victims. And we need to say there's zero tolerance and that we are going to put policies in place where they can have an environment where they can thrive, a healthy, work environment, and that's good for everybody. And I'm happy that my male colleagues and female on a bipartisan basis are saying we want to do, some good updated policies, tough. We don't want to tolerate any of this. They've got daughters and everyone in the workplace, but even if you don't have a daughter, this is about basic decency and being able to be in the workplace free of sexual harassment. It's so demeaning.
Could I ask you one last question before I let you go, which is, because your bill will take a while to get through, let's just say there's young women there right now who feel like, wow, I have 180 days, I didn't even know that. Maybe they feel like they want to come forward, but your new process wouldn't have been law yet. Young women would look up to members of Congress like yourself. What would you tell them today that they should do if they're going through that right now?
Well, yeah, when we do want to change that, because that's too long, and even in some cases where it's criminal, they need to have a victims council so they can go forward and, if they have to deal with any kind of criminal charge, an assault or any kind of sexual violence. So I would tell them to, there are whistleblower protections, so people can come forward to a trusted source where, within the government or a friend. There's, there's counsel, out at different groups. But I think we want women to feel comfortable coming forward. And then we do also want to protect everyone's rights, too. And,
right.
The EEOC has policies in place that Congressman Byrne, who, had done a lot of these cases, I mean, he had gone, years ago, he had been going into boardrooms and saying, you have to fire the CEO who, was inappropriate with a 22-year-old, and they would do it. This has been going on, so we need to get that. The EEOC has a lot of those guidelines that provide fairness on both sides, but also make clear that there's zero tolerance.
All right. Congresswoman Barbara Comstock, thanks so much.
Thank you.